Hello, my viewers. Have you ever wondered how this conflict in the Middle East started? Let's take a look at what happened to get us here. Enemies in the shadows. The history and escalation of the Israel-Iran conflict. In the heart of the Middle East, two nations stand on opposite ends of a deeply entrenched geopolitical divide, Israel and Iran. One is the world's only Jewish state, small in size, but armed with cutting-edge intelligence, powerful allies, and a formidable military. The other, a revolutionary Islamic republic, vast and ancient, driven by ideology, ambition, and a vision for regional dominance. What started as a pragmatic partnership decades ago has since deteriorated into a long, simmering confrontation, a shadow war fought through proxies, cyberattacks, assassinations, and veiled threats. And in recent years, that shadow war has crept closer and closer to open conflict. This is the story of how it all began, and how the flames of hostility have been fanned decade after decade. Before revolution transformed the Middle East, Israel and Iran were not enemies. In fact, they were once close allies. Under the reign of the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the two countries shared mutual interests. Despite Iran being a majority Muslim nation, the Shah viewed Israel as a strategic partner against rising Arab nationalism and Soviet influence. Israel, isolated by its Arab neighbors, welcomed the friendship. The two nations collaborated on trade, intelligence, and military technology. Iran even supplied oil to Israel when others enforced embargoes. Back-channel diplomacy and quiet cooperation marked this era. It was a pragmatic, if fragile, relationship, one destined to unravel. Everything changed in 1979. The Iranian Revolution erupted, overthrowing the Shah and replacing the monarchy with a hardline theocratic regime led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The new Islamic Republic had no place for ties with what it labeled the Zionist regime. Iran broke all diplomatic ties with Israel. It expelled Israeli officials, cut off trade, and rebranded Israel as the arch-enemy of Islam and a symbol of Western imperialism. Khomeini's regime vowed to support the Palestinian cause and dismantle what it viewed as an illegitimate Israeli state. And thus began a new chapter, not of diplomacy, but of enmity. While Israel and Iran never fought directly, the 1980s and 1990s saw their conflict play out through proxies. One of the most significant developments came in Lebanon. After Israel's invasion of Lebanon in 1982 to root out Palestinian fighters, Iran seized the opportunity to establish a new force, a Shiite militia that would become its most potent weapon in the region, Hezbollah. Trained, funded, and armed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Hezbollah quickly grew into a powerful militant organization. Its mission? Resist Israel, protect Shiite interests, and serve Iran's vision of Islamic resistance. Meanwhile, Israel began to raise alarms about Iran's nuclear ambitions. Though Iran claimed its nuclear program was for peaceful purposes, Israel and much of the West believed otherwise. The seeds of a deeper, more dangerous conflict had been planted. By the early 2000s, Israel's concern over Iran's nuclear program had grown into near obsession. Israel feared a nuclear-armed Iran would threaten its very existence, and it wasn't alone. The international community imposed sanctions, issued warnings, and engaged in tense diplomacy. But Israel wasn't willing to wait for negotiations. Instead, it went on the offensive. Israel launched a covert campaign to slow down Iran's progress. Nuclear scientists were mysteriously assassinated. Explosions rocked Iranian facilities. And in 2010, a sophisticated cyber attack, the infamous Stuxnet virus, crippled Iranian centrifuges. All signs pointed to Israeli involvement. At the same time, Iran intensified its regional efforts, building a resistance axis that included Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, all sworn enemies of Israel. The shadow war was no longer just in the shadows. It was becoming dangerously real. In 2015, a breakthrough, or so it seemed. After years of negotiations, Iran and world powers signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly known as the Iran Nuclear Deal. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. The world celebrated, except, notably, Israel. Then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denounced the deal as a historic mistake, arguing it left Iran with a path to the bomb and emboldened its regional aggression. Israel began lobbying the U.S. to withdraw. 3 years later, under President Trump, the United States did just that. Iran resumed its enrichment activities. The brief hope for de-escalation was extinguished. As war tore Syria apart, Iran saw an opportunity. Iranian forces and their allies, including Hezbollah, entered Syria to prop up President Bashar al-Assad. But for Israel, this was unacceptable. It feared a permanent Iranian military presence on its northern border. In response, Israel launched hundreds of airstrikes on Iranian targets inside Syria, missile depots, weapons convoys, and command centers. These strikes rarely made international headlines, but signaled a silent, relentless war just over the horizon. Syria had become the front line of the Israel-Iran conflict. By the 2000s, the conflict had reached a boiling point. Iran was now closer than ever to developing nuclear weapons, enriching uranium to levels just below weapons grade. Israel responded with more daring operations. In 2020, top Iranian nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was assassinated in broad daylight in an operation that bore the hallmarks of Israeli precision. Meanwhile, Iran expanded its influence in Gaza, supplying weapons and funding to Hamas and Islamic Jihad, both of which launched rocket barrages into Israeli cities in 2021 and 2023. Each round of violence was more intense than the last. Cyberattacks increased. Israeli ships were hit in the Gulf. Iranian missile factories were mysteriously sabotaged. A quiet but constant war was now raging across the region. As of mid-2025, the Israel-Iran conflict has never been more dangerous. Iran continues to enrich uranium and test long-range missiles. Some analysts believe Iran could build a bomb within months. Israel has warned it will not allow this, no matter the cost. Cross-border skirmishes with Hezbollah in Lebanon have intensified. Iranian-backed militias in Syria and Iraq have launched rockets at Israeli targets. Israel has responded with devastating airstrikes. Behind the scenes, U.S. and European diplomats scramble to prevent open war. But time is running out. The question now is no longer whether Israel and Iran are enemies. It's whether they are on the edge of a direct, catastrophic war. The Israel-Iran conflict is not just about two nations. It's about ideology versus security, regional power versus survival, and proxy warfare versus direct confrontation. As tensions climb, the world watches, hoping the war that has been fought in the shadows does not erupt into the light. Because if it does, the consequences could reshape the Middle East and the world for generations to come.